Story 1. Went camping to connect with nature. Nature responded with 47 mosquito bites and a raccoon that stole my chips. Story 2. Went to a casino. Boring and depressing, not at all like the imagery portrayed in the advertisements. People in stained sweatpants sitting at slot machines, an elderly man pushing his wife in a wheelchair, and the man next to me at the blackjack table on oxygen. A woman wearing a cat sweater yelled at me when I tried to play a slot machine, saying it was her machine. Truly depressing. Story 3. Told someone I was fine when I absolutely was not, just to keep the peace. It felt easier in the moment than being vulnerable or starting a difficult conversation, but it ended up creating much more distance and resentment in the long run. I learned the hard way that bottling things up does not protect the relationship. It slowly erodes it. Now, even when it is uncomfortable, I try to be honest. Not dramatic, not hurtful, just real. It is scary sometimes, but it is so much healthier. Story 4. I financially helped a man I had been dating for only a couple of months. Turned into tens of thousands of dollars that he cannot repay. Story 5. Cash advance from a credit card, never again. I was on a business trip 25 years ago, visited the casino, and withdrew $300. I had no idea how much that would cost. I discovered you have to bring your entire balance to zero before they consider that money paid off. I sent a check for the whole balance and thought I was good. Later, I learned they apply any payment to cash advances last, and since I had swiped the card once or twice before the check arrived, the balance was not zero, and the interest kept compounding. I am glad I learned that young and on a small amount. I am also glad it was so painful that I never forgot. Story 6. Stay with someone who lays a hand on me. I stayed with my ex. 12 years faithful and financially supporting someone who constantly cheated, stole from me, and physically abused me. They broke my bones. I was brainwashed. You promised you would never leave me. I'm sick. If you didn't do that, I would never have done this. I was 16. They were 21 when we started dating. The worst mistake of my life, putting my family through that. They watched me suffer by choice, continually choosing to stay despite their advice and support. Story 7. One day, I went on vacation with a man I hardly knew because I thought, why not take a chance? Maybe it's fate. 2 days later, I realized this was not fate, but a catastrophe wrapped in swimming trunks and passive aggression. We even argued about how to peel an orange properly. Sleeping in the same room with a man who annoys you is, I tell you, a separate level of hell. Since then, I have firmly decided that trips are only with those whose anxiety, manners, and breathing I am willing to tolerate for at least a week. Story 8. Ride an electric scooter. It may seem silly, but one incident affected my life for over a year. I was thrown off an Uber Lime scooter and completely wrecked my knee along with other injuries. I tore my anterior cruciate ligament, had a medial and lateral meniscus tear, bruised medial collateral ligament and posterior cruciate ligament, ended up with a hematoma on my head, and had a deep gash on my other leg. Absolutely never again. Story 9. White water rafting. One of my brother's childhood friends is a professional river guide in Colorado, and we were visiting the area with family when he asked if we wanted to go on a rafting tour one day. I know he knew what he was doing, but I have never been so scared in my life. I'm glad I tried it, but I never need to do that again. Story 10. Biting into a muscadine. Paying a large amount of money to a search engine optimization company with the belief that I would make a lot of money in a competitive cold calling market. Spending the day at a lake wearing my pale skin and no sunscreen. I was a kid, not my fault. Sun poisoning with second-degree burns all over my face. Jumping off a high bluff into the water. Eating raw oysters. Sliding my thumb over scissors to see if they were sharp. Pressing my finger into a car cigarette lighter. As a kid, I thought that's where my fingerprint came from until I realized I had them on all of my other fingers too. Getting mauled by a dog who tried to kill me. Hopefully never again. Story 11. I dated a man with severe maternal attachment issues and an absent father. I feel like I was punished for all their mistakes when I was his wife. Story 12. Jet skiing from Brooklyn down to the Statue of Liberty. The waves were intense. 2 hours of being tossed around by nonstop waves. Felt like I was in a car accident every second. I had never jumped a jet ski before. That day, the jet ski was constantly airborne because of the waves. It was fun, but never again. Story 13. Paragliding. I am terrified of heights. Still to this day, I do not know why I agreed to do it. I have never been so scared in my life. Story 14. Loan money to family and friends. My rule now is if I cannot afford to gift the money with no expectations of repayment, the answer is no. I have found that if I refuse a loan, we still remain friendly. If they do not pay me back, the friendship ends. I now choose to maintain the relationship even if it disappoints the other person. Story 15. Ride amusement park rides. I used to love them. Now, even just watching someone else ride makes me nauseous. Story 16. Ketamine was offered to me as a line. I thought it was cocaine. It ended in a K-hole of pure terror that felt like 12 hours. It was apparently only about half an hour at most. Rating 1 out of 10. Best left for horses. Story 17. Ketamine was administered to me in an emergency room under a doctor's supervision. I had an amazing experience while they reset my severely injured arm. I will never forget that, and I will never do it again. Story 18. Acid. I was 19 and a friend said it was a better buzz than beer. I am 60 now and still remember how bad that trip was. Not negative, but 2 days of no sleep was hell. Story 19. Having sex in a car is unnecessary because I am already married and can do it in my bed. Additionally, we do not fit comfortably in the car. Story 20. Molly dumped the little vial in a water bottle and just sipped it on the train. I finished it a bit before my stop and was told, "That was a lot. Just ride it out," by my sister. I got off the train and felt like I was frolicking in a field of daisies. I put my shades on and vibed around Brooklyn. I have never felt so at peace and chilled out in my life. Anyway, I won't do it again because of the risk of fentanyl or being slipped something else. I already took that risk, but I got it from a trusted source. While I loved how it felt, that sense of calm, bliss, and relief, it's not worth dying over. Be safe out there. Story 21. Where is the comment about the man who thought he had a poop kink and realized he did not after the feces was in his mouth? Story 22. Stole something. Brock's candy display at the supermarket. I was about 7 years old. I was caught and felt embarrassed. I never stole anything again. Even when something is missed at the checkout, I go back to make sure I am charged. It might be overcorrection, but I cannot relax otherwise. Story 23. Climb to the top of the pyramid in Chichen Itza, Mexico. It is no longer allowed and it was very scary. Story 24. Say, I'm glad I realized who I am. For context, I realized I was transgender about 3 weeks ago. At first, I was happy I finally figured out what had been troubling me, but then I also realized I know almost no people who I can confirm are not transphobic, and my entire family is highly transphobic. So I have to keep lying to people that I am a cisgender. Man, when that is not who I am, the only place I can talk about this is online, and half the people there are transphobic. The other 49.9999% simply ignore me or miss the point and say things that just make things worse. Then about 0.0001% of people are actually people I can trust at least partially. When people insult transgender people, it used to simply disappoint me, but now it actually hurts and partially scares me mentally. I do not think I have the strength to keep going like this for much longer, even though it has only been around 1.5 weeks since the negatives began to set in and build up. But I have nobody to talk to, vent to, be honest with, get advice from, or relate to. Not even anyone to trust. Pair that with insomnia caused by legs trying to cramp for no clear reason for the past several months, as well as many other major and minor inconveniences, and it is not looking good for my mental health. I just need to rest at some point. In summary, being transgender around transphobic people is a curse, even when closeted. Story 25. Jumped off a 67-foot cliff. To be fair, I had jumped off many cliffs before this, but the realization of how many things could go wrong made me understand this was a one-time event. Here is a reference video. I am not the jumper or involved in the video in any way. It just shows people jumping off the same spot. Story 26. Skiing. I did it once when I was 14 and broke my arm so badly that I needed 3 operations. I still cannot move it properly 36 years later. It was fun the first couple of times down the hill, but that was enough to put me off it for good. Story 27. Get tossed. I am a commissioned security officer in Texas, and I carry a taser. Part of the training to carry one involves voluntary exposure to the device. I am glad that I did it. I can genuinely express how much it hurts to be tossed, especially since, during my exposure, the lower probe missed and my trainer had to stun me in the calf to achieve neuromuscular incapacitation. But never again. Story 28. Shot a gun. I hated it. Never again. I felt very pressured by my best friend who had moved south, and I was visiting her. She took me to a gun range. No thank you. Hard pass. Story 29. I took a shower after bowel movement without wiping first. Many people seemed unbothered by it, so I thought it was a more efficient way of cleaning myself. Never again. It was almost traumatizing. Story 30. Get wasted. I would get drunk, but not like I did once. I made myself a cocktail with 4 to 5 kinds of alcohol because I never let myself mix. My memory loss started after 15 to 20 minutes. Story 31. Get a manicure and pedicure. The polish started peeling off after only about 7 hours, and I ended up with a cut on my heel. Story 32. Drove 68 miles from my small town to my state capital on a moped with my now husband for a spontaneous, I hate my job. People are difficult adventure. It was not smart and a lot could have gone very wrong. Not to mention, it was not exactly legal because we took some interstates and highways. However, I would not trade the experience for anything. The memories we made are incredibly precious to me. We saw many places we otherwise would not have, and now we have a really fun story and cautionary tale. I would never recommend anyone do what we did, but it was definitely fun. Story 33. Took LSD once many years ago. Enjoyed it for about 8 hours, then disliked it for the next 24 hours. I am sure I could have done things differently for a better experience, but I do not care. It was terrifying. Story 34. Trying the wax. From the experience, it is fine. You feel a tingling in your body like when a limb goes numb, and you feel like you are floating. However, the truth is that I will never do it again. Story 35. Professional teeth whitening. I have had a cesarean section, and the recovery hurt less than getting my teeth whitened at the dentist. I do not think it is supposed to feel like my mouth was on fire, but it did. It was supposed to last 1 hour, and I had to stop at 45 minutes. It was excruciating. Story 36. Tried to live my dad's rally lifestyle on a dirt road somewhere. That is a Plymouth touring cruiser I did not want to bother making someone repair. Story 37. Go off trail on a hike. I was taking my fiancé to my favorite hiking spot, and even though I normally never go off trail, I chose to be adventurous with him and explore something off the trail. I slipped into a really muddy area. Turns out, underneath and around that mud was a poison ivy and poison oak type plant that I didn't see and got all over my back, chest, and neck. It was the most excruciating 2 weeks of my life. Thank God my fiancé knew what to do for it since he had gotten it before. Story 38. Childbirth. I still managed to get a second child through step parenting. Yay, bonus child. I am getting sterilized next month. Both my children are teenagers, and I am too old and tired to start over with a baby. I will wait for grandchildren. If they do not have children, I will be a bonus grandparent to my nieces and nephews and/or cousins' children. Story 39. A few things. Building a fence and installing new floors are the top 2. I did them and proved I can do them. I will pay someone to do them in the future. Story 40. Join the military. I did it once. It was the best decision I ever made. However, I do not recommend it and would not do it again. Story 41. I have a marine fish tank with expensive water monitoring salinity sensors that need to be calibrated. I purchased a calibration reference fluid from Amazon for $35. On the 500 milliliter bottle, it said 100% seawater. Story 42. Road trip with friends in Southern California to Yosemite, Sequoia, and other places. One of those friends died 2 weeks ago from brain cancer. Story 43. A girl performed oral sex on me. She really wanted to and convinced me to try it. It was not terrible, but it did not do much for me, to be honest. Story 44. Going down the tallest water slide in Wisconsin Dells, I had to hold my breath to prevent water from going up my mouth and nose. I had to lie on my back. Story 45. Be a fan of American or similar non-American singers like Ariana Grande from 2013 to 2019 and Selena Gomez in 2016. After discovering how toxic these individuals and their fan bases were, I would say never again. Story 46. Hitchhiked all around the country a couple of times back in the 1970s. Dear God, why am I still alive? Dear guardian angels, thank you. Story 47. I will never hide anything from my parents again. I was groomed from 8 to 15 years old by multiple men online. I feel nauseous imagining how many images and videos I sent during that time, thinking it was okay. I also wish I never listened to the men who told me to hide what was happening from my parents. Story 48. Ran a marathon just to see if it was as hard as everyone says. The last 8 miles were brutal. The next day was excruciating. Story 49. Go to work hungover. I would rather work a 24-hour shift straight with no breaks than work even just 4 hours hungover. Story 50. Clubbing. I went clubbing once, and the whole time I wondered how anyone could find this enjoyable. I looked around, wondering if everyone was actually having fun or just pretending, because I cannot understand how this could ever be fun. Story 51. Staying friends with people who spread rumors about me. Do you want a few examples? I am into group sex. I am pregnant. I cut babies. I fake my mental illnesses. Just to clarify, I am a virgin. I cut myself, not babies, and I have been clean for over a year. I have been starved, abused, and manipulated, and I have post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, and more. I was also in foster care for 7 years. Story 52. Prior to the cinnamon challenge going viral on YouTube, I tried a small spoonful of cinnamon once because I assumed it would taste great. After all, I love cinnamon rolls, cinnamon bread, and all kinds of cinnamon. I am not doing that again. Story 53. Normal to high dosage of medical ketamine, the nasal inhalation version. I started it for depression treatment. I have an incredibly sensitive system when it comes to new medications, so when I started at the low starter dosage, it was a wonderful experience, as someone who has never been able to get high. It was honestly helpful. However, when I started the insurance-covered dosage, which you have to stay on to be fully covered, it was one of the worst experiences I have ever had in my life. I cannot fully explain how it felt, other than that it seemed like my reality had shifted, and I was going to die. It was a severely bad trip, mentally and physically. It was absolutely terrifying and sickening, honestly to the point that I needed help out of the car and into the house an hour afterward. Story 54. I tried rock climbing a couple of weeks ago, and it was too scary for me. I barely made it halfway before falling. Story 55. Getting a breast biopsy. I have dense breasts which can show up on mammograms and sometimes look suspicious. Years ago, when I went for a biopsy, it hurt very badly, and I instantly decided I would never do that again. I have had recurrent depression for as long as I can remember. It goes into remission, but it always comes back regardless of any therapy, psychological or pharmaceutical I have tried. I am currently in ketamine-assisted therapy to treat treatment-resistant depression. It helps, but it is not a cure. Once my father dies, he is a fairly healthy 78 years old, but still, knock on wood, I will have no interest in fighting any kind of cancer that may develop. Since I am not going to get an excruciating biopsy done and will not treat anything anyway, I stopped getting mammograms in my late 40s because it just seems pointless. Story 56. I am with my dream girl. We have children. The children ruined my relationship. She does not see me anymore, only the children. I feel like just a tool in the shed. Or so it feels. I also attended a Coldplay concert. Story 57. Tried to assemble IKEA furniture without reading the instructions. Ended up with 3 extra screws and a wobbly chair. Never again. Story 58. Use Dr. Brown's anti-colic bottles for my infant. Me at 3 a.m. after trying to get my daughter back to sleep 3 hours ago. And those bottles gushed like an ounce of milk all over her. I had to completely change her, and now she is wide awake. Another sleepless night because of these bottles. Probably 100 hours of lost sleep and just as much frustration during the day. These bottles come recommended by 2 different doctors, but I am one of 4 dads who really dislike them. My daughter dislikes them too. It has been a point of contention to throw them out because it is wasteful and expensive, but I just bought some replacements to be delivered tomorrow. I am fantasizing about getting rid of these things. Meanwhile, my daughter is as awake and alert as could be. Thanks, Dr. Brown. Story 59. Intentionally vomiting in the bathroom at the club. I thought the stalls were empty, but they were not. Never again. Story 60. I once trusted a friend who broke a promise to repay money she borrowed. It has been almost a year now, and I think she has almost forgotten about it. It is definitely something I will not do again. Story 61. Spit in my roommate's soup while he wasn't watching. He intentionally left a big piece of glass in the shower, so that's why I did it, but I still felt bad. Story 62. Take the shortcut through the wetlands to get home from school. Crocodile sightings headline the news the next day. So lucky. Story 63. Go on a giant roller coaster because I screamed myself hoarse, got off and wobbled about, then vomited over 2 strangers' feet and my own feet. Took me about half an hour to feel anything like okay. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.